What waste generated by mobile contract cleaners may be hazardous waste. Your oil absorbent booms, you need to treat them just like a used oil filter. Wash water containing solvents and cleaners, fats, oil and grease, total dissolved solids, heavy metals, pesticides, herbicides, and insecticides, paint chip containing lead, mercury, chromium, or cadmium, lead from battery washing or engine degreasing, high pH levels caused by acid brighteners, asbestos contamination from insulated shingles and sidings and antifreeze. Remember in the early 70s and before, asbestos siding used to be fairly common. I know it was on the home that I grew up in. Hazardous waste. Mobile contract cleaners should avoid hazardous waste if at all possible, because POTW generally do not accept hazardous waste and expensive and burdensome to discharge it elsewhere. The relationship of what we do. Everything we do is eventually going to be recycled. So you want to look at your pollution prevention is the best way, so that keeping pollutants out of the cycle from the beginning. Pay attention to where your wastewater is going. BMPs for containment. Rules and guidelines for typical jurisdictions. Suggested options on how to comply, including best management practices and equipment. If a dry method is used, no wastewater is generated, so discharge would require a permit under the Clean Water Act. But where you dispose of that waste may be required. Always pre-clean. In some cases, you can eliminate the need to collect wastewater if you follow this process. Used absorbents such as rags, absorbent mats, pads, rice hulls, kitty litter, sand, and oil soap to pick up greasy or oily spots. Sweep or vacuum, pick up litter, debris, and saturated absorbents. Properly dispose of absorbents and debris. In the vast majority of cases, bag it and place it in a regular trash. Wastewater control devices. In here, we got a vacuum sludge filtering system. This vacuum will pick it up. It's 55 gallons. The water only gets about 12 inches in the bottom. There's an automatic sump pump which discharges that wastewater out to the sanitary sewer or holding tank or wherever you're directing it to. In front of a vacuum boom here, and those come in 5, 10, 15, and 20-foot lengths. You got an oil absorbent boom, and behind that you have a portable dam, a water-filled dam. It's either water or sand. Most people use water if they're going to be over about 6 feet. For the contract cleaners, these need to be about a 55-gallon size, because you're going to have about 35 gallons of foam that collects on the inside. If they're smaller than that, and you're using chemicals or detergents, that will get up into your vacuum chamber and it will shut the unit down. There's a picture of the oil absorbent booms. I don't know if you can see it or not. There's oil sheen coming in right here. There's no oil sheen here. And by here, it's dry. This is a vacuum boom. It's got several ports here. And there's lots of sources, and there's vacuum berms. They're basically the same thing. And this is hooked up to a vacuum system to where it will pull all that. Get with your individual vendors for these particular products. This is the first time me personally become aware of somebody washing on a portable wash pit, which was in 1991 by Dan and John Costello in Connecticut. Pepsi-Cola got into effect. They had a sump pump down here that picked the wastewater up and sent it to the sand trap at that particular location. And they used berms made out of PVC pipe, and they made it out of a tarp material, so when it was wet, it was real heavy. Since then, those are almost always made out of a material that won't absorb water. This is another case, an example of a guy washing with a water recovery. And you see he's got a vacuum system over here. There he's picking up the wastewater in that corner. All the water will flow down here. The other thing a lot of the regulators have trouble with is people have purchased all this equipment, then when they go out on site, they're not using it. So I had one major contractor that was doing that, and the regulator called him up. He had several crews and said, I know you know what the rules are, and this is what your crews are doing. This has got to stop, or I'm going to write you a significant ticket. The way that particular contractor solved that problem was he didn't have a ticket to pay, but he spent the money to hire a supervisor that to this day goes around to all the sites and spot checks his crews to make sure they're using their equipment and doing it, following their BMPs, and not a rogue crew that's just trying to get away with everything. So you got to implement procedures that your employees have the equipment and that they use the equipment. If they're not using it, the regulator can cite the owner of the property and the owner of the contract cleaning company, and can cite the guys that did it, and basically everybody that's involved in the situation. This is another example. Here the guy's using a sump pump. He has barriers down here and a lot. He's got a wire screen filter right there so that he's filtering his wastewater. It goes up into a holding tank, and then he moves over. That goes to the sand trap, and by gravity flow, that goes into the sand trap. So we're not talking about a lot of expense here. He bought him a sump pump and a filter, and he had a generator on his truck already that he hooked that up to. So he's in water tank on there. So you can see that equipment right there, you're talking about maybe $200 at the most, and he probably already had the tank that he can pull over there in the truck. That's what he had to add to what he already had to get in compliance. Vehicle, truck, and fleet washing. For truck washing, evaporation, absorption, and drag off normally count to 20 to 50% of your water loss, depending on how warm the ambient temperature is. After washing is accomplished, the wash area should be cleaned to prevent dirt, sludge, and debris from being washed into the storm drain when it snows or rains. The washing of hauling compartments, interiors of trailers, and tankers should be limited to non-hazardous, inert, and biodegradable materials. Portable dams. There's 2 or 3 on, there's basically water bladders. That's another type that's made out of a heavy material that will stick down to the storm drain. It's a real thick and heavy. It's funny to pick that up. It's real heavy. This depends on the amount of water in it. As long as the water in here is higher than the water outside, you can pick it up. This particular contractor has a sump pump, and around the bottom of the sump pump, he has a window screen. So now then he's filtering his wastewater, and I've seen a lot of times where they put a whole absorbent boom around here, and that way he can pick up that wastewater, and he's pre-cleaned and filtered his wastewater through a whole absorbent boom. I think we got a photo in a little bit that shows that. Oh, here it is. Next slide up. I thought this was pretty unique. Contractor went out and bought a child's wading pool. He got a sump pump like from Home Depot. He put a whole absorbent boom around it and a screen down in the bottom. So he done his pre-cleaning with a leaf blower, and as long as the water is higher on the inside of this child's wading pool than it is on the outside, that'll seal off a storm drain real good. Don't look professional, but it works. He run into a case where he had to do one at night, and he didn't have time to get all his stuff, so he met the minimum requirements. He picked up his wastewater, he filtered it through a screen and oil absorbent boom, and then he discharged it to the sanitary sewer. So you can see if you want to go this route, a couple $100. Cheap. Don't look commercial, but it works and it's legal. Installing drain plugs in municipal sewer system to contain wastewater is highly discouraged. The reason why is for these to work, you put air in them. We've had several situations where the contractor's personnel put too much air in them and blew up the storm drain system, or to keep the water from going down in there. So if you use these, there's a risk. And the risk is you might be repairing a municipal storm sewer system because you put too much drain down there. I want you to bring those to their attention so at least you were aware of that particular product. I just have several examples here. This is another one made by another company, and they're putting down a filtration in front of the storm drain. You might be able to adapt this type of technology for your cold water washing with no chemicals. And here's another case where the contractor picked up the storm drain and put a screen under it, and then he put his filtration out here. So he did his always filter and always pre-clean. So there's his two filter methods. So the methods of filtration want to be the most effective thing available, and if that's the most effective thing available, fine. You need to check locally. That will meet the requirements of the model ordinance and is legal in the city of Fort Worth. This is a vacuum recovery system. This is a surface cleaner that picks up the water as you put it down, and when operated correctly, they'll leave the surface damp and pick up all the wastewater. That way you don't have to put down all this water capture equipment. You got it right in front of you. Some commercially available equipment. This is a carpet cleaner. They took one of these surface recovery units, and he's cleaning with it. Of course, he's got a big carpet cleaning unit there, so it's easy for him to comply. This is a flyer from Vacuum on that thing, and that's available from many vendors. This is a truck wash bay, and what they've done is run a berm right here, if you look, and then they got the drain there. That's actually not a drain. That's a drain, all right, but it only goes down. It's about a 10-gallon, maybe 15-gallon drain with a sump pump set into it. It pumps the water up to the sand trap in the middle of that bay. This has recently been expanded to an all-concrete surface instead of asphalt. Oh. And there's environmental wash rig. I hadn't noticed it in the corner, but he's got a vacuum sludge filtering system set in there, and he's got a holding tank set in there, so he hooks up to the customer's water for his washing and recovers the wastewater in that. That's a generator back over in that corner.